Hi, I'm Maggie Alfonsi, former England rugby player and now a MasterCard ambassador. MasterCard is proud to sponsor the Telegraph Women's Sport podcast hosted by Dame Laura Kenny. MasterCard has championed women's sport for over 25 years. Discover more at mastercard.co.uk/impact.
Welcome to the Telegraph's Women's Sport podcast with me, Laura Kenny. In this episode, we're tackling an important topic that affects so many women and girls in sport: body image. We'll be delving into how concerns around body image can hold girls back from participating and enjoying sports, and how even elite athletes aren't immune to these pressures. We'll explore the role that society plays in shaping perceptions around weight and aesthetics, and how we can shift the focus from looks to performance. So for me, I haven't ever actually had any body image concerns, I guess. When I was at school, I realised that I was different. I started cycling when I was young. So for me, I started riding a bike when I was 8. I was probably 12 or 13, I guess, like year 7, year 8 time, when I actually realised I looked different. But for me, I quite liked that. I quite liked the fact that I looked different to everyone else. You know, my legs were really muscly. Like, cyclists are known for being powerful, right? And I knew that I had a six-pack, mainly from doing trampolining. But I quite enjoyed the fact that I looked like that. And I also quite enjoyed the fact it meant I beat the boys quite often, to be totally honest. But what I would say is, I feel very lucky that I didn't grow up in the social media world. Because do I think that affects how people see themselves now? 100%. I think it's a world that you now can't escape. And, you know, you put an image out there, you're opening yourself up to anyone judging it, good or bad. And something that I've experienced, I guess, throughout my whole career. So, yeah, as much as I feel I was lucky now, for the younger generation, it's not the case. So just to bring my guests involved into this conversation and to better understand the impact on body image in sport and how we can create a more positive narrative for women and girls, I'm joined by incredible guests who bring both personal experience and inspiring perspectives to the table. First, we have Ellie Boatman, England Rugby Sevens player who represented Great Britain at the Paris Olympics and overcame personal struggles with body image to help other women feel strong through their fitness coaching. Then we have Amy Truesdale, the 3-time Para-World Taekwondo champion, who won gold at the Paris Paralympics 2024. And last but no means least, we're joined by Kate Dale, campaign director of This Girl Can at Sport England, who has led the charge to inspire millions of women to get active, regardless of their shape, age or ability. With 20 years at Sport England, Kate has led initiatives that challenge society norms around women in sport. Welcome, all three of you. I'm very excited about this conversation, actually, and to delve into how you, I guess, have experienced either body image challenges or, I guess, you know, from the other side, working with people who have had body image challenges. So, Ellie, if I just start with you, you obviously started playing rugby when you were 16, but it wasn't just a smooth journey, was it, for you, going straight into the Olympics or being part of England, I guess?
No, so first of all, I originally started playing when I was around 4 years old with my brother, mainly through kind of jealousy of my brother playing. And at that age, I didn't really think of the fact I was the only girl at all. I just got stuck in. I loved the fact that I could be faster and stronger than the boys around me. And it wasn't until my teenage years at school when rugby wasn't necessarily accepted as a girls' sport at school, so I wasn't really encouraged to play it. And then I realised that I was sort of a bit different because I played rugby. And then social media did definitely have a part to play in it, as I'm sure we'll discuss. But I knew then that I had a bit more muscle and I was a bit stronger than the other girls around me. And it definitely made me look at my body and how it was. And when I went to university, I then really struggled with my own eating disorder, and fitness became very, very obsessive. I stopped playing rugby at 16 through to about 2021, and I was just going to the gym just to lose weight and do lots of cardio and be as small as possible, basically. And it became really unhealthy and really obsessive very quickly, and I was just so warped in that way of just being as small as possible, and it consumed my thoughts every single day. And it was no longer about being healthy and fit for a sport. And luckily I did rediscover my love for rugby rugby at university by chance, to be honest. But getting back into rugby and getting back into elite sport actually really helped me overcome my eating disorder, because it was I knew I had to fuel myself in order to train and be the best version of myself. And if I was under fueling, I knew that I just wasn't performing. So it really helped then kind of rewire my brain with food and my own relationship with myself, that I really needed to fuel myself if I wanted to take rugby to the next level. And then obviously that's led me to now becoming an Olympian. So I'm really, really grateful that I went through that journey. It's definitely more grateful for how my body is now. But I see so many young females in and out of sport experience the same sort of feelings and the same journey. And yeah, I do think that social media has a big part to play in that.
Did your school even have a female rugby team?
No, not a secondary school. It was very
they don't
much...
tend to, do they?
No, I remember I went for a sports scholarship at the time, and they were like, well, do you play netball and hockey? And I was like, well, no, actually, I'm in the pathway for England for rugby. Like, I play for my county, I play for my region. They're like, oh, we need you to play hockey and netball. And I was like, well, rugby's my sport. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's getting a lot better now. We're seeing a lot more girls at school being allowed to play football and rugby, and play not just like the traditional sports, I guess, that were back in the day for females. So it's great to see now. But yeah, of course, I wish I'd had that at school at the time.
And like you say about having an eating disorder, and, you know, social media playing a huge part in that. How old do you think you were when you first started? Like, when did you get social media to eat for that even to be a journey? I think Instagram was probably around 14, 15 years old, but I definitely remember even as young as 12, 13 thinking about being smaller. Okay.
And I don't know if that was necessarily having kind of older people around me in life who were maybe talking about diets and things. And I remember back then as well, like seeing magazines everywhere, just like slating celebrities and women's bodies and things. And I just remember that being such a big thing. And I do always remember back, like most females I knew in my life were always speaking about, oh, I'm going to go on this diet to lose some weight.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely played a part. And when I got older, I assumed that actually, as a female, we just have to worry about how small we're going to be, or how much we're going to lose weight or be on the next diet, not how am I going to fuel myself to have enough energy to play sport and to be honest, to live, not just to play sport, but to fuel yourself for every single day. Like, that was not something I was conscious of when I was younger.
How'd you get out of that spiral? Like, once you're in something like that?
Yeah, it was really hard. And I think for quite a few years, I was really defensive about it, and I would lash out about people. And even things like my family would want to go out for dinner, and I'd be like, I don't want to go out for dinner. I don't want to do these things. It's going to take me off me being, because I thought I was being really disciplined and really healthy and fit, and I just thought everyone was trying to stop me from doing that, and actually that wasn't the case. But I actually eventually reached out to a therapist, an eating disorder therapist, and worked with her for quite a while. But you have to have that period of acceptance and realizing that you do have a problem, and for some people that can take quite a long time to actually get to that point, because your brain is so warped in, no, I need to be smaller, people are stopping me from being smaller. So you know, it's a constant thing. I wouldn't always say I'm like completely recovered either. Like, I definitely get thoughts sometimes at training where I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm eating too many carbs. And that's just something that I call it like my girl brain side, but that does still happen. So it's an ongoing, I don't think you're always fully cured. I think it's an ongoing thing that you have to keep working on.
Yeah, okay. And Amy, for you, has your disability ever affected your confidence?
I think when I was younger, I think I was pretty confident, to be honest. So I started taekwondo it's like 28 years ago now. So I was only 8 years of age. So I walked into my local leisure centre, and it was a male dominant sport. I was obviously a female and I had a disability, but everyone was like really welcoming of me. So anything that I needed to do in a taekwondo class, so for example, like press ups were quite challenging because my left arm's like 13 inches shorter than my right arm. I'd find ways to adapt, and the coaches were quite supportive, so they'd get like some taekwondo pads to put under my smaller arm to balance me out. But yeah, I think I was accepted. I think I only sort of had prejudice towards me when I got into my 20s, and I was probably in the outside world and interacting with other people. I'd say that was more challenging for my experiences, like society putting limitations on you on face value because they can see you physically have a disability before they actually get to know you. But when I was younger, I think I wasn't really aware of it. It was like, oh, I'm born like that, so I just got stuck in and cracked on like everyone else, really.
I mean, the Paralympics was absolutely incredible. Like just watching you guys compete, honestly, I just think is like just the way that you have to adapt, like you say. I just think is I couldn't do it. Like honestly, like some of your abilities, I think are absolutely incredible. Like I say. So just touch upon for us. So between 2020 or 2021 Paralympics and then this year's Paralympics 2024, you went up a weight category, did you?
Um, yeah, so it's the same weight category. They just basically shifted the numbers. So for Tokyo, I was in plus 58 kilograms. So
Okay.
58 kilograms is light, but you're
Yeah.
considered a heavyweight fighter. So then they readjusted that, and then it was plus 65. Going into Paris. So yeah, that's the division that I continue to stay in.
Oh, okay. I see. So they literally just changed the name of it. So you didn't have to adapt at all. It was the same.
No, no. So that like the weight division, once you get to plus 58 or plus 65, there's no limit on the weight division. So some of the
Okay.
girls that I come up against, some of them might be 90 kilograms, some might be 80. I'm probably at the lower end of just being in the heavyweight division. So yeah, it's quite a vast number, really.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that really is.
Yeah.
And Kate, just to bring you in on the conversation, why is body image such a barrier? And what are the solutions, do you feel, to, you know, keep girls involved in sport, to forget about like this perception of it's only about body image?
Big questions. I think what's really sad and what is still, and I'm older than all of you, so I would have really hoped that all of this would have changed by now. Clearly it hasn't. But as girls growing up, we don't get to have our own opinions about our bodies. They are put on us by the outside world, really. So I think that's part of it. And I'm a stepmom, and when my, she's 20 now, but when my stepdaughter was 8, she loved playing sports, she loved being active, and she would do anything. And I just kind of knew that there was this impending 10, 11, puberty, secondary school kicks, and
Yeah.
self-consciousness arrives. And everything seems to change. So I think there's so many attitudes that are probably passed down from previous generations in the media surrounding us, obviously even worse in social media now, that just program us all to really not have that positive relationship or even a neutral relationship with our body or think about what it can do, but that its shape and size are policed somehow by the society that we're in. So I think there's an awful lot of reprogramming sounds a bit sinister, but it is that of ourselves, but also of society, because I think especially in those teenage years, you're looking for clues as to who you are and where you fit in the world and what your identity is. So you'll pick up on all sorts of tiny, tiny, tiny signals that will say, no, I think in most cases you need to be smaller. And I think that the use of the word smaller is really, particularly for women, take up less space in the world, take up less space, be nice, be petite. So I think there's a lot to change about that. So solutions, again, I think there is definitely something around how we keep girls active over that period, and so that they have the experiences that you had, Lauren, so they value their body and they celebrate what it can do. And we get this through the campaign. Woman said to me once that what she loved about getting active was it changed her relationship with her body, and she focused on what it could do rather than what it looked like. And I think the more we can focus on that and make sure that's reflected in the way we talk to girls and women, the way we market to them, the way we portray sport and physical activity, that can start to, and there's a big job to do, but that can start to chip away at some of it.
Yeah. I mean, is it an educating thing? Like, do we need to educate the younger generations? Like, would it help if, you know, around sports lessons at school, for example, that they spend 15 minutes at the start, like almost empowering them, you know? Like, I always felt like my body was a machine and like a really strong working machine. And like, that's what made me feel special. So like, is it, you know, that we need to just teach the younger generation that you are going to be muscly, you are going to feel strong, but it's a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, absolutely. I think there's going to be lots of different ways that this can change, but I think education is part of it. I think letting girls have, and I think this is better now, but have more freedom about what they wear during PE and sports lessons. I mean, I grew up in the era of gym slips and, oh God, that makes me sound even older than I am, but, you know, it was not the 50s, but, you know, gym skirts and gym knickers and things like that, which, you know, and I've been a yo-yo dieter all my life. I've an unhealthy relationship with food. I think certainly most women my generation do. So, you know, as when puberty hit and everything, all that, God, that hideous phrase, puppy fat. Forgotten about that phrase. But all that stuff comes in. I think, being able to address, so I think being able to have more autonomy over what they wear for PE, talking about strength.
That actually changed, in my year at school. Like, so
It's just so recent.
people were like campaigning, I guess is the right word, because we had the teeny tiny little shorts and the skirts, and no one wanted to wear them. And that changed when I was still at school. I think we were year 9 or 10. So what I'm talking like as recently as 2007.
It's bizarre.
You know?
It seems so anarchic now, doesn't it? Anarchic. Yeah, no, that's the wrong word. Old-fashioned.
Yeah.
It seems just bizarre. So I think that's part of it. I think, and what we've done with This Girl Can, and what we've seen more sports marketing do as well, actually, is celebrate bodies of all shapes and sizes getting active, and whether that's elite sports women, but also people like me who will do a very slow bike ride, Laura, trust me. It will not look like what you do. It will be quite wobbly.
I also do now very slow bike rides.
But and getting active for the sake of it, and not getting active to lose weight, because that whole beach body ready, tone up, get buff. I think even phrases like strong is the new beautiful, I know that's trying to be empowering. Why do we have to worry about being beautiful? Why can't strong be the new strong? And let's just celebrate being strong for the sake of it.
Yeah. I mean, a BT Sports study found that 80% of the 110 elite female athletes surveyed felt pressure to conform to a certain body image type, which is mad, isn't it? Like, to even think that people are exercising and thinking, oh, I must look a certain way. I mean, just to directly compare men and women's rugby, the guys are all strong built, aren't they? Like, that's the whole... But yet you'll get a female rugby player who feels she shouldn't necessarily look like that because of the way the public, I guess, are perceiving her. I mean, just to take it back to London 2012, there was a comment made about Jessica Ennis-Hill being fat. And I just think you've literally got someone who is the pinnacle, my absolute idol, and someone has called her fat. What is that doing to the younger generation? Like, the mindset that brings?
Twitter has a big part to play in speaking about athletes in that way, and I've had to completely block and ignore people at times because people do just comment on your body when you play sport. And also I went through the phase as well of seeing photos whilst you're playing rugby. Your body's going to move in different positions. The camera's going to get angles of you that aren't potentially the most flattering that you've ever seen, but it is just your body moving, and sometimes it's so easy to get warped in that, and people see that and they're like, oh, she's not as fit as we'd think for an elite athlete, and they do think you should look a certain way. But I'm lucky in my sport, for instance, that there's so many different body types in women's rugby. Like, we all have different positions, and I'm a winger. I'm one of the faster ones on the pitch, so I'm one of the smaller ones. And even then, I sometimes think, oh, I don't want to get my arms out in public because I am quite strong compared to like the everyday person. Yeah. But I try and check myself and say, no, like, my body does a purpose for me in my sport, and it gets me through every day of training and everything. But people do see it and they're a bit, I don't know if the word threaten's the right word, but I think they're a bit taken aback by how much muscle you can have, and you can still be super feminine and how you want to be.
That TikTok video that you posted in the black dress, oh my goodness. I mean, jealous is the word that I would use. I would much rather look like that than I would looking like I haven't eaten. Like, I honestly think that video that you put out was like mind-blowing. I thought you looked absolutely incredible, and like, I just wish that people saw it the way I see it. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, your body looks amazing, you look fantastic, but some people will look at that and go, oh no, she's too muscly. Like, which is madness.
We get through the research we do on This Girl Can, we've had women say that they don't want to go to the gym because they're worried about being too muscly, and it's back to that narrative, is that we should be working out to be thin, to be small, to be petite, not to be muscly. But yet, and obviously all the medical and all the health around as we get older, the importance of strength, the importance of muscles, what you do in your 20s having a bearing on what happens post-menopause. And it's such an important health message, which is not the way to motivate people, because that doesn't massively get people. We should be doing it because it's fun, because it makes us feel good, because we're glad when we can stop doing it, maybe. There are all sorts of reasons that might motivate you.
Yeah.
But, it's praising people for being small just seems odd.
Yeah, and old-fashioned, like you said earlier. Like, it really does. And Amy, obviously, you have to have weigh-ins before competitions. Do you ever find that quite tough, or is that something now that you're used to? Or do you know anyone, I guess, within your sport that finds that quite difficult?
Not really. I think because you're in a weight making sport, it's one of those things. I think the only time I do feel it's a little bit difficult because you're in a massive group of athletes who are all in different weight divisions. So when they're talking about their diet habits or how much weight they've got to lose, or they think they're fat, and you're thinking you're so tiny, you're not fat at all, because they're obviously basing it on a weight sport, like I'm fat because I've got 3 kilograms to lose. You then sort of feel uncomfortable in some conversations because you're thinking, well, if you think that about yourself, like, how do you view me when I'm in 2 categories that are heavier than you? But for me, like, I'm just in the mindset is, yeah, I'm older, I don't want to get injured, I'm going to fuel myself and just be the strongest and the baddest in that division. For me, some conversations with other athletes, if they are in a lighter weight division to you, that's a bit uncomfortable for me, because I do other people think, oh, she's overweight or she's heavy? And I think the best thing to do is just not compare yourself to other people. Like, we're all so different. But anything that I do now, nutrition based, is for performance goals, so it's not aesthetics. And I think if you have got the right support with your nutrition as well, and you're training hard, I think your body sort of speaks for itself. So you don't really need to be on these crash diets and comparing yourself to other people, which I think other people are a massive influence. I think they can sort of give you a bit of a inferiority complex at times. When you've got someone who's maybe a size 8 going, I'm overweight, you think, oh, well, what do you think of me, if that's your view of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, in the cycling world, that is actually quite a big issue, especially on the road. I mean, maybe not so much now, because I do feel like there has actually been quite a lot of research put into fueling, I guess, and forgetting about how light you are. Because obviously in road cycling, you go up hills. There is a certain weight that is probably ideal, I guess. But there has been lots, I guess, spoken about recently about Red S. And Red S comes from because of underfueling, and it basically means that you don't have a period. And I've known girls that have passed through my career who that's happened to, and before we even had any knowledge, I guess, or information on it, thought it was the norm, and that it would just come back like after you finish cycling. Now, like, this genuinely isn't the case. It's not as simple as, it will just come back. Plus, also with Red S, there's a whole heap of information now about, like, it can change bone density, it can give you infertility, you could be infertile because of it. And now, for me, that's massive. Like, we compete in sport, and I appreciate that we are going out there to try and win gold medals, but I wouldn't want that at a cost for my health. And there is very little information that is based around females only. Like, we know that. The amount of in-depth, I guess, stuff that we do around men's sport is huge. How much we do around females, quite small. And now, I would hate for someone to come to me, and it has happened when I came out talking about, we had a miscarriage and then we had an ectopic, and I've never had Red S, but I know how that kind of broke my heart. Now, to think of people who have had Red S because of underfueling, and that could happen to them, is heartbreaking. Or to feel like you fit in a sport. And I do think it has been an issue with, the thinner you are or the lighter you are is better when it comes to riding up a hill, for example. And it's not necessarily the case. But how do we change that mindset, though? Like, how do we change it from being all about... But I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, how do we just look at women for their sporting performance rather than what they look like when they're performing?
Oh, that's a hard one.
It's got us all stumped, hasn't it?
I think, personally, being in the sport myself, is that we need to encourage more male coaches who come into different sports to have as much knowledge and research as possible into the female body, because personally for me, I have been coached like a small male for years before, And like a lot of the studies in our sport is based around males, it's not based around females. So I do think education into how a female body works is like the start of it, and that's in terms of coaches, athletes themselves. Like, we need more people speaking about how our menstrual cycle affects our training. Like you said, how we shouldn't accept not having a period during training, because I've also did athletics when I was younger, and I know that there was people who would encourage not having a period, and they thought that's a good thing, that means you're training hard enough. So I think it starts with accepting that we aren't males, we are females, and that we should be coached and trained as females.
Did those athletes have someone they could speak to about that when they were growing up?
Honestly, no. And it was very much a taboo topic where you would just kind of crack on with it, to be honest. And
could you even speak to your coach? Could you even tell them that you're on your period?
No, not from a young age. Now, much better. Like, I am surrounded by amazing medics and things now that I will speak very openly about it, and it's not a taboo thing. But even things like when we were younger, we were scared to say, like, I don't want to wear white shorts because if I'm on my period, like, something could happen during an 80-minute game. And like, conversations like that are getting better now, but no, definitely not. I think you had a lot of male coaches back in the day who didn't necessarily want to speak about that and didn't think it was important to speak about a menstrual cycle, whereas now I think that should be the bog standard. If you want to work in female sport, you need to have education into how a female body works. And I think when we then have normal conversations about that, then perhaps women will just be appreciated for their performance. And I know that the menstrual cycle and body image isn't necessarily a complete link, but I just think, if we have more coaches and athletes who are very educated on female bodies, then female athletes are going to be respected for how we are.
I think they're very linked, actually, because I think there's some sort of perception that we're sort of mutations of male bodies as opposed to being whole people in their own right. And I think some of the stigma and disgust that there has been historically over menstruation is to do with disgust of women's bodies and how we can often feel about it. It's the shame we feel talking about it. I mean, the idea of a 14 or 15-year-old talking to their coach about their period, to me, I imagine it's still the same. You just wouldn't, because at that stage in your life, the whole thing feels excruciating, right? Yeah. You're still coming to terms with it. So to be able to have, and I think that's probably part of the problem, is all this is happening, I imagine, in your teens when you're grappling with so many other things about self-confidence, and you have to have these quite adult conversations with a very often quite older male coach who doesn't have any experience. So I think I agree with you, that training and that background and the work done by people like the Wellness HQ to really understand and really see a menstrual cycle and really recognise what makes it powerful as well, and understand the different phases of cycles that they can bring to training seems fantastic. I also have to say, all of you talking about these issues so openly is brilliant, and I think hopefully you're changing that, not just for elite sportswomen but for all of us as well, because full disclosure, in the past I thought it was easy for all of you because you're sporty, because you're fit, because you're paid to be fit, so therefore, and presumably you love what you do, so getting up and going for that training run or going round and round, I don't know how you do that, go round and round and round and round without going, but easy, right, because you love it. And I think the more conversations I've had over the years of working in the skill can is that we're all we're judged by the same standards, except you're plastered over newspapers and on TV screens in teeny tiny clothes and scrutinised and debated just for doing your job.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that you're talking about it, periods, body shape, body size, eating, I think goes a long way.
Yeah. I mean, I actually remember saying I've always been quite good at talking, I guess. I can quite open, and like nothing's really fazed me, I guess, throughout my career. And I actually remember going in and telling my coach that I was on my period, and I feel like he was almost shocked. But I think by me doing it meant that it opened up. And because I was young, I think at the time, everyone was just like, oh, she's just being daft, she's told him. When obviously deep down I was like, well, no, because I have 2 days where I'm going to now train really badly. And I wanted him to know that because I didn't want to be judged by it. And so, yeah, and I remember going to him and he was a bit like, okay, do I need to know that information? And I must have only been like 15 or 16 at the time. But I'm like, no, but you do need to know that information because you're about to select me or not select me. And this isn't what I'm like normally. Like, I do have 2 really bad days. And I actually think, just to touch on what you were just saying about, us talking about it goes a long way. People like Jessica Ennis-Hill, she's got Genis. And that's amazing. Like, it's an app that literally tracks everything. It tells you the days you should train on, the days you shouldn't train on. And people like that, I think, play a huge part in keeping people involved and I guess, changing the mindset of both coaches and the athletes, because I do think we should also be a bit more informed on our own bodies. You know, like we should put in a bit of work into learning our bodies more, because one, it does have an effect on performance, but I also think it does have an effect on outcome, you know, like whether we should be doing a strength-based session or an endurance-based session. It makes a huge difference. So I do also think it comes from us learning ourselves a lot more.
Hi, Maggie again. MasterCard are proud to sponsor the Women's Rugby World Cup 2025, partnering with World Rugby to accelerate the development of the women's game and inspire more women and girls to play and watch the sport. Discover more at mastercard.co.uk/impact.
Let's just go back again, I guess, to what we were talking about earlier in social media. I grew up without it. I remember getting Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, back in 2011, because it was at the first World Championships I went to. And I remember just writing, like my first tweet was something really confident, like, I'm going to let my legs do the talking. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, that's really embarrassing. But it just wasn't a thing. Like I wrote that and then I didn't go on it for the whole championships, and it just sort of disappeared in the background. Whereas now, it is literally everywhere. Like the Olympics, TikTok was insane, wasn't it? I mean, your 7 million for a video is mental. But that's what's happening now. There is no getting away from the fact it's playing a huge part in what girls see and what they're perceiving sports people to look like or to be like, act like. How do you educate them away from that? Like, how do you tell them that you don't have to be someone else? You've just got to be you.
I think personally, for me, when speaking to other younger girls, I think it's really important to let them know that a lot of what they see is, one, a highlight reel, and it's the best version of everyone. And quite often that's not a reality of most people. And two, quite often what they're seeing on their Explore pages is a very small elite group of people that you wouldn't see in everyday life. And when I sit with a group of friends on the beach on holiday, it sounds ridiculous, but we look around and we're like, most of the people you see here are not what you see on Instagram in everyday life. Like if you look at bodies on a normal beach, there is nothing like what you see on Instagram, and it's such a small filtered version of everyone that is often not real. And also a lot of the editing apps are really scary, and I also try and say that whenever I go to any girls rugby clubs or anything like that and I speak to some of the younger ones about Instagram or social media, I just say to them, remember, like, some of those editing apps are literally editing female bodies. Their waists are smaller, their bums are bigger, all sorts, and it's not real. So please don't compare yourself to that, because it's not reality, and that's not what an everyday person looks like. So
it's not obvious either, though.
No, it's not. It's really scary, and it's also scary how even like in a video now, you can edit someone's body in a video whilst they're walking, and their body's completely different to what it actually is, and you couldn't even tell, and it's terrifying. But I think it's really important in schools or somewhere that there is some education around social media, and the kind of the dangers of it as well.
Because it is life now.
Yeah,
there's no getting away from it. Like, it is life.
And it's boys and girls. Like, I know a lot of boys struggle with now not feeling muscly enough, because every single image of a male on their Instagram is this super muscly, jacked guy that isn't reality for most people in the world. So yeah, I think for me it's education massively, because it is such a minefield now. When I first came on Instagram, it was nothing like that at all.
No, like it wasn't, though, was it?
Dancing around and being silly.
Yeah.
It was fun, and now I feel like we've moved away from that a bit.
But like you say, it's just portraying the good. Like, you are literally just seeing a snapshot of the good, and then that's what makes it quite difficult, isn't it? Because everyone sees this pretty painted picture. It's not real life.
And that's why I think I first started speaking out about my body image on my Instagram and started showing negative sides of things that I'd experienced, because I was like, no one's posting about what they've been through. And there is more of that now, and I think it's really positive that people are showing their bad days and what they have been through. But that was a big motive for me to start speaking about what I'd been through, because I was like, if I'd seen that when I was going through it, it would have helped me. So I think it's really important to show that side of it, the things you have experienced, or even if you have had a bad day, sometimes that can help someone else being like, oh, she's had a bad day as well.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the flip side of social media. It can actually bring out people. And, you know, like for me, I used it as a platform. Like talking about having a miscarriage was horrific. But actually, for me, it gave me a platform to talk about it. And it actually could help someone else, you know. And then we're talking about body image. You've got people like Emily Campbell, who is amazing. Like she is like an absolutely fabulous role model to the next generation of any sports, not just weightlifting. Like, and the way she was at the Olympics and her attitude is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I love her to bits. I think she's absolutely brilliant. And that is the flip side, isn't it? Like, it is giving people a platform to show the good, or to show that, you know, us as sports people feel very differently about our bodies.
Yeah, and I think trying to make sure that we, all of us, do what we can, try and flood social media with the more positive images. So whether, again, it's, you know, it's all of you, it's Emily at elite level, whether it's, and again, something we do through the campaign, it's having unfiltered, unphotoshopped, certainly not AI generated images of everyday women getting active in the ways that work for them, with any jiggles that we have, any sweat that we have, with or without muscles, whatever size we are, even if we're really rubbish, but sharing those as well. And all of us sharing our images, I think, helps to at least try and counterbalance some of that sort of fake perfection. Because what I think is really interesting is that, I mean, young people particularly are so social media literate. They can do things with filters that I couldn't even dream of. So they know it's not real, yet it still eats away at you, because you're still, I guess, we're sort of programmed to look for the bits that make us feel bad for whatever reason. So
it should definitely be more obvious when people have filtered something. I mean, I know it's difficult now, isn't it? Because there's so many apps that you can use, and then you just upload it onto Instagram. It's not like when you use a filter and it comes up at the top. But like, even for someone like me who now has used social media for a long time, I literally can't tell. I wouldn't be able to sit here and flick through and say, oh, this person's made this slimmer, or this person's, you know, done this to themselves. It's so hard.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And I guess ultimately it's trying to get away from the idea of why, trying to unpick why we want to be slimmer, why we want to be tiny, what is that, and trying to really change that narrative. But I realise this puts a lot of onus and a lot of burden on elite sportswomen who are just trying to do their job right. And yet all of a sudden you have all of this burden to carry as well on behalf of all of women, which feels like an awful lot. We don't put that on sportsmen, I don't think.
No.
We don't ask them to share their stories and talk about their difficulties in the same way.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
And I love the fact that you do, so please don't stop doing it. But I am very, very conscious of the double standard that we have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Can you just talk us, just go through a little bit of what did you think led you to having an eating disorder? Was it the feeling or the sense of social media causing such an impact, or was it just something in your head that just felt like you needed to change the way you looked?
Now reflecting on it and speaking to therapists and things, I think there's a few things that could have potentially caused it. So one's kind of the environment, and I grew up in a really, really brilliant family, like always encouraged to play sport and everything, but I was definitely conscious of people around me and females speaking about diets and diet culture. And I think it's really important with your language around younger girls not to speak about being smaller and being on diets and things, and encouraging a positive relationship with food and yourself. So for instance, it's not anytime soon, but when I have a daughter, I know now that I will not be like, oh, I'm on this shake diet or whatever around her, and I will really be conscious of that. So that's definitely one thing. I think control had a big part to play in it. So my eating disorder was at its worst when I went to university. So it was the first time I was in charge of my food, my own room, everything like that. And I definitely took it to the extreme. And I'm not really sure why that happened, but I think it just became obsessive very quickly. And I don't know if that's the elite sports person in me, is that every day I'm always criticising myself. I'm always trying to be better, trying to be perfect. And I've always had that kind of personality. And I think that stemmed into food and an eating disorder. And then I think the third thing definitely is social media and being a teenager and the pressures to look thinner and fit into a certain dress. Like I remember at secondary school girls at school being like, I'm not going to eat for a few days because I want to fit into that dress at the weekend. And being surrounded by those conversations at the time, like rugby wasn't cool. And I was so conscious of wanting to fit in that it then, for whatever reason, then just stemmed into me being really controlling over my fitness and my food. And that took a long time to unlearn, but it's understanding that. And I think I would encourage anyone who is feeling that certain way towards food to go and seek help and speak to a therapist, someone who can potentially unpick that for you, and to be able to understand why you may have had that relationship with yourself and food. And it can become super clear as to actually that's why, because I felt like that as a child, or I was surrounded by these conversations at school. But it does take time to unpick and unlearn.
It must be so difficult because it's not like other addictions where abstinence is the answer, right? Because obviously healthy eating, being active is good for us. So finding the balance, you can't just avoid it. So that must be so hard.
Yeah, and as I said, like at training and things, I try and encourage conversations. Like, it sounds like a really stupid phrase, but me and my friends say to each other, like, pasta makes you faster.
Yeah.
Like little things like that, little lingo, just to really encourage that actually carbs are a good thing. They're not the devil. Like, we try and encourage positive conversations around each other, like carb loading the day before competitions. We just try and make it as positive as possible, because it's so easy sometimes for me to feel a bit bloated or something and then think, oh goodness, I need to lose weight again. And it is just a kind of conversation in your brain that does still happen, is an ongoing thing. Positive conversations with your friends and your teammates and things around food, I think, is so important.
And Amy, how has social media affected your career? Like, have you ever been trolled on social media at all? Ever had to deal with kind of that side of things?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, whatever you post out there, you forget sometimes. Everyone can see it, so you've got to take the backlash. So, yeah, I will have posted pictures before, and I've had inboxes. So it was a couple of years ago, I'd posted a picture and, like, I'll fully embrace my arm. So it was like you could see that my arm was visible. And then somebody had inboxed me going, oh, like, you look like Captain Hook, like, you're a loser, you did in your competition, sorry for swearing. So you get things like that, and then I'd went on a holiday, and then somebody had commented on, like, my stretch marks and stuff, and I thought, like, for me, the stretch marks have just shown, like, I've been working hard in the gym, I've gained a bit of muscle, so for me it's good. But I think once you put stuff out there, you've got to accept you will get the backlash, but not that it's acceptable and it should happen. But I do get quite a lot, but it is usually about my body shape or it is about my arm. So,
which is mad though, isn't it? Like, what gives someone the like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, how do you think that that's okay? You know what I mean? To comment on what someone looks like. Like, I always find it mad, and I know we talk about keyboard warriors all the time, but I just find it mad that someone has literally sat there, thought it, and then written it down. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how's that thought process got to the point of you actually pressing send?
They've got other things to do.
Well,
I guess it's the problem. But why they feel they can, why they're wasting their time doing it, what they think they're achieving or what they're getting out of it.
Yeah.
I suppose.
But it's sad though, isn't it? Because it has such an effect. Like, I did the BBC stuff, obviously, at the Olympics, right? And somebody had written that they didn't like my voice. And, you're like, why have you written that down? Like, because I can't do anything about that. Like, where's your thought process gone? You know what? She really needs to know this. Like, it's
always an anonymous profile as well.
It is, yeah.
I think that, and I always try and say this to myself, it often is them having a rubbish day or a reflection upon themselves where they're feeling really self-conscious about something, and you're super easy to criticise because you're on the TV or you're in front of them, and they take that self-anger out on you. And it's hard to think like that, but it is true. Like, it often is a reflection of themselves coming out on you. But again, like, why do you have to write that? Just keep it to yourself.
Yeah. And like, even when you're angry and you're like, you'll write something and then you're like, I'm not pressing send. I just needed to write this down to then press send. It's like, I just don't get why people think that that's okay.
And it's the anger at confident, successful women, right?
Yeah.
Or women who present in that way, whether or not you're confident. And I think that's, which is still part of a whole other, there is so much more abuse of women online than there is of men online.
Yeah.
Pretty sure most of it is from men, not from women. Now, some women, we can be not nice as well. I do know that.
There was that thing, wasn't there, about it was two presenters, right? And the male wore the same outfit for something like 60 days solid or whatever. Or was it a year?
It was a year,
It was a really long time.
Australian newsreader, I think. Yeah.
And nobody said anything about it. Yet the female did the same for like a week and she got absolutely slated. And it's like, hang on a minute. Like, how are we? This is just not fair. Like, why are we commenting only on what females are wearing or what they look like or what they're doing?
we can all do better, right? I mean, and we're all part of... I'm fairly confident that none of us would be making those comments. I'm fairly confident about that. But I guess we're all part of a society, and we know people who maybe do, or I don't know. It's really hard to know what to say to people. Just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And there's nothing more empowering, I don't think, as when females back females.
Yes.
Like, my team is so, like, we are so for each other. If you're having a bad day or you're not feeling great about yourself, it only takes one of my teammates, and I mean, you must experience being a part of a team, or even you, Amy, you know, being part of Paralympics GB. When another female comes up to you and goes, God, you were brilliant today, there is no nicer feeling than that of your teammates saying that.
We've said that recently. We're like, celebrate all the small wins together, because actually we see each other get better on the pitch in performance when we say, you did a really good pass, or they were amazing then. You see each other grow, and like, you're right, there's something so powerful about a group of women together celebrating and supporting each other, and that is something I'm lucky in my sport. We're a very tight-knit group, and we do have each other's back. When someone's having a bad day, we try and lift each other. And I think it's so powerful. I don't think you necessarily always see that in a male sporting environment. I think there's something about a female sport where we really do get behind each other, which is special.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And right, just from each of you, if we could get one passing thought that if you would want to put out to, maybe it's the younger generation, maybe it's to your old self, about body image and how, you know, you want it to be perceived, or how women should reflect their own body images, what would it be? Ellie, go on, you start.
I think I would say to my younger self that even when you get to your smallest, you're going to be your most unhappiest. And food is something to be enjoyed, but it's also something to make you healthy and strong. So to encourage that to young girls is that food is not something to be demonised. And when I was at my unhealthiest and getting compliments and all sorts, I was at my unhappiest. So diets are never going to be the root of your happiness at all.
I think for me, being a woman is a team sport, right? We can lift each other up, we can support each other, and we can make things. That's the bit that we can change. So thinking carefully about, if you are using filters, if you are talking about diet culture, just being conscious of the impact that could be having on anybody around you. And absolutely, if you see someone doing well, if you see someone having a bad day, reach out, share, celebrate, lift up.
And Amy?
I think for me, it would just be, don't compare yourself to other people. Everyone's like been created in a beautiful, different way, so that needs to be celebrated. If you are around someone that is struggling, give them as much support as you can, or point them in the right direction so they can get that support. And don't get fixated on scales and your weight fluctuating, because I think people forget it can literally just be because you've had a little bit too much water. Sometimes it can be something so basic as water retention, and people are like, oh, I miss a meal. So don't get fixated on the weight. Just use it as fuel. Just think, how can I fuel myself to help myself feel fit, strong, and to fuel me for performance, or as an injury prevention as well, which is another topic of conversation. But yeah, use your body as a machine.
Well, thank you very much, all three of you, for coming in. I think having role models like you two, Ellie and Amy, and then campaigns like This Girl Can, I just feel are just so important for that next generation. And the more females that we can get into the sport, the more role models we have, and then the kind of the circle just keeps going then, doesn't it? Like, we will see bigger and better performances. And I think it's so important that we continue to talk about things like this, because we really do have to change, you know, the mindset, I guess, of the society. And I do think the mindset is changing, but I also feel there's still a lot to be done. But yeah, so thank you very much, because without people like you, you know, the conversation wouldn't happen. And like I say, I do feel it's massively important just to keep talking about things. So thank you, the three of you. Thanks for coming on. I hope you enjoyed talking about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You've been listening to the Telegraph's Women's Sport Podcast with me, Laura Kenny. Produced by Listening Dog Media for the Telegraph. Series producers for the Telegraph are Giles Gear and Sarah Mockford. To sign up to the Telegraph's Women's Sport newsletter, head to telegraph.co.uk/women's-sport.
MasterCard is proud to sponsor the Telegraph Women's Sport Podcast, hosted by Dame Laura Kenny. MasterCard has championed women's sport for over 25 years. Discover more at mastercard.co.uk /impact.